you mentioned a few of the different languages there. So PHP, Ruby, I talked about Java before, and Python. Which are the best languages to maybe start coding in at the moment? So if you've got someone who's just going to start coding straight away, where would you point them to go?
That's a good question. And there's no single answer. And the answer will change over time, because the best languages and the best technologies to learn are ones that are at the intersection of technologies that are in demand and technologies that you enjoy working with. And so you can kind of get a feel for which technologies are in demand by visiting certain websites. There's one that's pretty well known, not pretty well known, it's almost universally known in the programming world. It's called Hacker News. And if you Google Hacker News, you'll find it. And in this sense, hacker doesn't mean like hacking into systems. It just means hacker as in programming.
Yep.
Hacker as in programmer. That's a different meaning of that word. Anyway, you can go on sites like Hacker News and Reddit. There's programming subreddits, and you can kind of get your finger on the pulse of what's in demand. You can also look at job ads to find out what technologies are in demand. And so that's good. And I kind of in my career, I've taken a little bit of a mercenary approach where I teach myself languages that I know are in demand.
Yep.
Because that's how you'll get a job, and that's how you'll get the higher paying jobs. But then, like I mentioned also, it's not enough that it's just in demand. It also needs to be something you enjoy working with, because if you're just teaching it to yourself for the money, but you actually don't like it at all, then you're going to have a pretty tough time.
Okay, and you mentioned some of the links there with Hacker News, and listeners, you'll be able to find a full transcript of the episode today, along with all the links that Jason and I mention at graduatejobpodcast.com/coding. So we talked about some of the different languages to start with. When you're teaching yourself, Jason, I understand, starting with a project, where would you then begin to start teaching yourself? Is it just a question of going on YouTube and looking at some of the videos there, or going on Reddit or Hacker News, or are there any other resources you'd recommend as good places to start, or is it more formalized courses of people teaching people how to start?
That's a great question. I can tell you how I've done it in the past and how I do it today.
Yeah.
So first of all, web development is really complex in the sense that there are a lot of layers. So when you build a web application, that's going to involve, let's say it's a Ruby on Rails web application. Ruby on Rails is a web development framework. So you're going to have at the bottom of that stack is the term we use. At the bottom of the stack, you're going to have Linux, which is an operating system. Then you're going to have a database management system like PostgreSQL. Then on top of that, you're going to have your server-side language, which in this case would be Ruby. And then on the front end, you're going to have HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and maybe even other technologies like Twitter Bootstrap. And don't worry if you don't know what any of those things are. I just list these things to illustrate the point that there are a lot of different things involved. And if you try to learn all those things at one time, you're crazy. So you should just start with one thing. And especially if you're brand new to programming at all, just start with one of those things and gain a little bit of competence, and then introduce the other ones bit by bit. So let's take Ruby for an example. I think that would be a pretty decent one to learn first. The way I would do that if I were starting today is I would just Google like Ruby Hello World. So Hello World is just kind of the term for the simplest possible program. The origin of that is like you might have a program that says print Hello World. It's just a one-line program, and it prints Hello World onto the screen. And so that's what I would look for first. Like, how can I write just the absolute simplest Ruby program possible? And once I've accomplished that, then I'll do something ever so slightly more complex. Then I'll do it ever so. The problem that I see over and over with people who are new to programming is they'll try to take on too much at once. And when they're writing a program, they'll try to write the whole program and then try to run it, and it doesn't work, and they don't know why. The way to go is just to do a little tiny bit and get that to work, and then add a little tiny bit more, get that to work, and so on. And that same approach works with writing a single program and just teaching yourself programming in general.